Back to the Future 2 is not a good movie. Wait, let me rephrase. Back to the Future 2 is one of my favorite movies, and it holds a special place in my heart. The franchise helped define the movie theater experience and the industry, and it has incredible visuals that still hold up to this day. That being said, the screenplay kinda sucks. And in order for me to talk about something that I love, I have to break it down first. Please keep in mind that while I exaggerate my language for dramatic and comedic effect, I love the Back to the Future franchise. I love Bob Zemeckis. I love all three films, despite the latter two's plentiful shortcomings. With that said, let's get started. Back to the Future 2 ruins Marty McFly. In a failed attempt to make Marty's character more interesting and perhaps more flawed, since he really is a flawless protagonist along for the ride in the first film, they create this chronic aversion to being called a chicken. But instead of creating a character flaw that gives introspection into Marty's character and makes him more relatable, this just creates manufactured conflict, resulting in unnecessary, conflict. It's just a means to further complicate the story and make more things for the characters to do, and I find it rather lazy. Back to the Future 2's story also breaks its own rules for the sake of manufacturing conflict. At the beginning of Back to the Future 2, Doc Brown flies the DeLorean in broad daylight, showing it to Jennifer and Biff, and immediately starts babbling to Marty about the future. In the first film, Doc shows he cares about the secrecy of this device by testing it under the cover of night when no one is around. Now, he creates all of the conflict in the story with his carelessness by letting a middle-aged Biff see the time machine, taking Jennifer with him, and taking Marty into the future in the first place. The whole plot device in the previous film was what you do in the past directly affects the future. And it was proved in the last film that you can tell your younger self things about the future that won't destroy the time-space continuum, as Doc insists. But in this film, Doc decides the best way to solve a problem in the future with Marty's kids is to take Marty there and solve it in the future, instead of, telling Marty to maybe rein in his kid a little in the future. Maybe put him in a nicer school or get him some self-confidence. How is going to the future and pretending to be your son a better plan than simply raising the kid different? Doc says that
no one should know too much about their future.
And that's why I can't just tell Marty about it in the past. So instead, he takes him to the future where he can see what it looks like and experience future technology and culture. I thought the letter Marty wrote in the last movie was on the verge of destroying the time-space continuum. But now, not only can you go and see your own future and nothing bad will happen, but you can experience it and nothing will come of that either. I digress. So Doc takes Marty and Jennifer into the time machine, and halfway through the ride, Doc neuralizes Jennifer. He could have done this before they left and dropped her off at the house, and the same effect would have been achieved. They have a time machine. It doesn't exactly matter when they leave. So they get to the future to solve the problem of Marty's kid getting into trouble with the wrong crowd. But wait, if Marty and Jennifer disappeared in 1985 in a time machine and were not present to get married and have kids and exist for 30 years until 2015, how are they in their current time period? Marty and Jennifer shouldn't exist in the future that Doc brought them to. George and Lorraine should be reminiscing about how 30 years ago their son and his girlfriend went missing and are presumed dead. Anyways, so Marty does his shenanigans and Doc does nothing for a while, and unconscious Jennifer gets taken by the cops to her future house to create some conflict, otherwise the movie would have been over already. The time machine is unattended outside of Marty's future neighborhood, while old Biff remembers the time machine and takes the sports almanac to his 1950s self so he can be a bajillionaire. Then, Biff comes back to put the time machine back where he found it, and he didn't alter the past? According to events later in the movie, Biff should be in the future that he just created by giving his younger self the sports almanac. But instead, he travels to the future that was unaffected by his decision where Doc and Marty are. Then, Doc and Marty go with Jennifer back in time from the future they were in that didn't have an evil rich Biff to 1985, where Biff is now rich and powerful. How did they get into this timeline if they were in a future unaffected by Biff having the sports almanac? How come they can't leave this timeline without going back even further to change what Biff did, but old Biff can just leave whenever he wants and go back to an unaffected future? The answer to the reason all of this is a garbled nonsense mess is because of one simple answer. Back to the Future 1 took Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis 7 years to write the screenplay. They had plenty of time to perfect the work of art that it is. And Back to the Future 1 really is an incredible film, and it will be studied for decades. It shouldn't work the way that it does. Marty is a virtually flawless hero that mostly just reacts to what happens around him, and the movie constantly spouts exposition at you in a not even slightly subtle way. And yet it works. It's one of the most iconic, entertaining, widely known, and renowned films ever made of all time, period. Back to the Future 2 not only had to follow that, but it had to top it in spectacularity, and it had to have another sequel follow off of its coattails. And it had to be written in almost half of the time that it took to write the first one. So yeah, Back to the Future 2 is not as good as the first one. And yeah, Back to the Future's story may be a complete disaster on paper. But I'll tell you what it does do. It delivers on almost every other level to the nth degree. The costuming, set design, and art department on designing the future did a spectacular job creating an intricate and believable world that still holds up to this day. The practical and special effects artists created sequences unlike anything to come out at its time, and not only that, but the effects in Back to the Future 2 still hold up in 2017, better than most movies to come out in the last decade. It also features a score by composer Alan Silvestri that is so good you're humming it in your head as I say these words. It's a score so good that people often think it was composed by John Williams because they think that the same guy who did the Indiana Jones theme, the Star Wars theme, the Superman theme, the Jaws theme, the Home Alone tune, and the Jurassic Park theme must have done this one. Back to the Future 2 also delivers on the comedy and heart that the first one featured so well. Michael J. Fox is a charismatic and convincing teenager with a heart of gold, and everyone around him feels so lifelike you hardly needed to think that these were characters on a screen, but people you knew in real life. I love Back to the Future Part 2, despite what I spent most of this video saying. Thanks for watching.